They cornered her in a locked room,
Look at her,
4
she's
men,
terrified.
no cameras, and an inspection order they made up themselves.
Should be.
They forced her to strip, piece by piece, her sidearm, her vest, her boots, her blouse. Then they demanded her undershirt too. And when she paused, they reached for her. One of them even put his hands on her until she lifted it herself. And they saw the scars, the kind you only survive once, the kind only one SEAL ever came back from. Before I show you what happened the moment they realized who she really was, make sure you're subscribed, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and share this with someone who's still silent about abuse in uniform. Because what happened next, they'll never forget it. The plane touched down at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado just after 0600. Fog rolled in off the Pacific, softening the edges of the tarmac and cloaking the distant skyline in a gauze of gray. The kind of morning where the sun took its time, where even the gulls seemed quieter. Lieutenant Commander Adrienne Cole stepped off the transport alone. No escort, no greeting party. Just a sealed envelope marked eyes only. And the kind of walk that made junior personnel stand up a little straighter when she passed. Her regulation boots landed with quiet certainty. Each step measured, grounded, as if the blacktop itself was something she'd been trained to read. She wore standard Navy tactical fatigues, no overt insignia. Her rank patch was modestly placed. No chest full of ribbons, no trident on display. Just a thin line of scar tissue visible at the base of her neck where her collar slipped, like a forgotten pencil mark from a story no one was supposed to know. Adrienne Cole had served 15 years in special operations. 13 of those with the SEAL team so classified most of its deployments didn't exist on paper. She'd been recalled from inactive reserve just 3 weeks ago. No ceremony, no explanation, just a phone call from a number she hadn't seen in 6 years, and a voice that didn't introduce itself before saying, "We need you at Coronado. You'll be observing." Observing what? That part had come later, quietly, off record, a covert integration program between Marine Force Recon and Naval Special Warfare meant to test new insertion protocols for joint quick response teams. Officially, she was there as a liaison. Unofficially, she was there to assess command climate and flag anything that might implode under congressional scrutiny. Because lately, things had been going wrong. 3 female personnel had requested abrupt transfers in the past 90 days. 2 classified gear audits had mysteriously gone missing, and someone high enough to get spooked had used the words "culture issues" in a Pentagon back channel. Which was why Cole wasn't here in dress blues or a private SUV. She was here quiet, tucked in the seams of officialdom. A blade slid between the cracks of the institution she'd once bled for. The junior enlisted clerk at the gate barely looked at her orders before saluting and waving her through. Her quarters were simple, temp billet near the back of the officer's wing. She unpacked quickly. 2 uniforms, 1 pair of running shoes, 1 notebook with weatherproof pages. Her sidearms stayed locked. She wasn't here to fight. At least, not yet. At 0700, she walked the perimeter of the training compound alone, not inspecting, not asserting, just observing. She noted how many were out for PT, counted the number of instructors correcting form versus letting it slide, cataloged body language, clicks, who looked up when she passed, who didn't. By 0715, whispers had started. "Who's the ghost in blue? She's too old to be a trainee. Did you see the scar?" She caught a few sideways glances from instructors. Some nods, one outright sneer. She didn't respond. Didn't need to. She hadn't been sent here to explain herself. She'd been sent to watch, and if necessary, to act. By midday, Lieutenant Commander Cole had already walked the full circuit of the facility twice. Not because she needed to, but because repetition exposed things the first pass didn't. The Coronado training compound was immaculate in the ways that made inspections go smoothly. Polished floors, pressed uniforms, salutes snapped on time, but there was something brittle about it, something just beneath the surface. She saw it in the weightlifting yard where 2 instructors barked at female candidates with twice the volume and half the patience they gave the men. She heard it in the forced laughter outside the armory, nervous, practiced, full of performative bravado, and she definitely felt it when the main instructor bullpen went quiet the second she stepped inside. "Ma'am," one of them said without looking up, his voice clipped. "You lost?" "No," she replied, steady, just observing. 4 pairs of eyes tracked her as she walked through the space. The first was Petty Officer First Class Travis Lasky, bulked out, squared jaw, sleeves rolled tight to showcase gym muscle. The type who asked for respect before he earned it and took offense when he didn't get it. He leaned back in his chair like the room belonged to him and gave her a smirk that didn't quite reach his eyes. Next to him sat Gunnery Sergeant Marcus Reed, USMC. Older, quieter, but with a resting scowl that could sour milk. He didn't bother hiding his distaste. He'd come up through the old school system, the kind where everything was settled behind closed doors and women were still considered distractions. Third was Petty Officer Nate Delroy, lean, tactical, the kind of guy who wore his sunglasses indoors and referred to civilians as targets. His gaze followed her with open hostility. She noted the subtle shoulder shift when she passed, defensive posture, train movement, and the last, Petty Officer Brett Langston, younger, fidgety, constantly checking his watch like he was late for a fight he didn't want to win. He didn't look at her directly, but he didn't look away either, the weak link. They weren't just co-workers. They were a cluster. She knew the type. Men who banded together not out of camaraderie, but out of shared resentment. Pack behavior, protective of their territory, especially from anyone, especially any woman, with more stripes and more silence. As she exited, she caught just enough of the murmuring to confirm her read. Who does she think she is? She's not even command staff. SEAL? That's a joke. By evening, the whispers had turned to speculation. She's here to report back. She's got Pentagon clearance. They said she took a bullet for a downed pilot once, but I don't see any medals. But some conversations weren't happening in whispers. In the mess hall, Petty Officer Second Class Maria Santos sat with her tray untouched, staring at her reflection in the metal surface. 3 months ago, she'd filed a harassment complaint against Lasky. Nothing physical, just comments, stares, the kind of behavior that made her dread walking past the instructor bullpen. The complaint had been resolved administratively. Lasky received a verbal counseling that wasn't documented. Santos received a transfer to night shift, which meant she rarely crossed paths with him anymore. Problem solved, her previous commanding officer had said, but Santos knew better. She'd heard about Petty Officer Collins, who'd filed against Reed 6 months earlier, and suddenly found herself assigned to a logistics detail in Alaska. She'd heard about Seaman Garcia, who'd complained about unwanted touching during equipment checks and received an early discharge for failure to adapt to military lifestyle. The pattern was always the same. Complaint filed, investigation stalled, victim relocated. Now Santos watched this new officer, this ghost who walked like she'd seen real combat, and wondered if things might finally be different. She wasn't the only one watching. Across the mess hall, Lance Corporal Jennifer Chen, no relation to the instructor, sat with 2 other female Marines. They'd been discussing the rumors in hushed tones, the way you talked about things you weren't supposed to hope for. "She's got clearance above base command," Chen whispered. "I heard Willis on the radio, trying to verify her orders with Norfolk. They told him to sit down and shut up." "Think she's really here about the complaints?" asked Corporal Murphy. "Or the gear audits," added Seaman Rodriguez. 2 classified equipment reviews gone missing? That doesn't just happen. But Chen was thinking about something else entirely. 3 weeks ago, she'd walked into the equipment bay late one evening to retrieve her gear. Delroy had been there alone, and he'd made it clear that her presence was an opportunity. She'd managed to leave without incident, but only because another Marine had arrived unexpectedly. She'd never reported it. What was the point? Delroy's word against hers, and she'd seen how those cases played out. Now, watching this mysterious commander navigate the mess hall like she owned it, Chen felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. And somewhere between the weight room and the dry range, as these conversations unfolded across the base, Lasky's plan began to form. She walks like she's untouchable, Lasky muttered under his breath as he watched her stride past the bleachers. Maybe we remind her she's not. Reed's reply was low, guttural. We've got the authority. Let's use it. Inspection detail, Delroy added, not quite smiling. Late night, just us. Langston hesitated. And that was enough. The first three didn't need a full plan. Just a room, a closed door, and an excuse. The kind the system was designed to believe. It was 21:20 when the knock came. Lieutenant Commander Adrienne Cole didn't flinch. She'd been expecting something, not this exactly, but pressure always arrived when silence wasn't enough to push you out. She opened the door to find Petty Officer Lasky, standing in the hallway, posture rigid, face professionally blank. He wasn't alone. Reed loomed just behind him, arms crossed, and Delroy hung farther back, one hand resting too casually on his utility belt. Langston wasn't in sight. Ma'am, Lasky said, voice clipped. We've been instructed to conduct a uniform compliance inspection. Immediate. By whose order? Cole asked, eyes narrowing slightly. Command, Master Chief, Lasky replied without blinking. Random rotation. You're on it. She held his gaze for a moment longer than was comfortable. There were 3 layers to every lie, the words, the delivery, and the confidence behind both. This had confidence, not born from truth, but from the assumption that no one would question it, that no one could. She stepped aside. Very well, lead on. They walked her across the compound in silence, out past the main barracks and down toward the older section. A squat concrete structure once used for advanced recon simulations. The exterior lights were off. The only illumination came from inside, a flicker of fluorescence through frosted windows. No guards posted, no clipboard outside, no sign of scheduled activity. Inside, the air was cooler, industrial, sterile. The room was empty but for a long steel bench, a wall of lockers, and a folding table already set up with forms, clipboards, and what looked like a regulation compliance checklist. Cole took in the details as if reading a battlefield. No cameras, door shut behind her, 3 men between her and the exit. Too much paperwork for a random check. This had been staged. Lasky handed her a clipboard. We'll need you to confirm you're not carrying any contraband beneath issued uniform. Standard protocol. Cole flipped through the sheet. No signatures, no dates, no command verification. Just a generic header. Rapid response inspection order. Tier 2 personnel. How long has this form been in use? She asked quietly. Reed answered for him. Couple months. You're not the first. Just the first to ask questions. Cole didn't respond. Her silence wasn't agreement. It was calculus. They expected her to resist, to argue, to protest. That was the trap. They were baiting insubordination, which could be twisted into non-compliance. Or worse. So she didn't resist. She nodded once. Let's get this over with. Delroy closed the blinds. The door locked behind them, and everything that followed was never about compliance. It was about control. The air inside the locker room seemed to tighten, not from temperature, but from intention. Cole stood still as Lasky unrolled a fresh inspection form with theatrical precision and placed it on the table. It wasn't a military form, not a real one. She'd seen hundreds, maybe thousands, of official inspection documents in her time. This one had just enough formatting to look plausible to someone who didn't know better. Reed held out a nitrile glove, snapped it on like a doctor about to perform surgery. His face was unreadable. Delroy leaned back against the far wall, arms crossed, watching like this was a show. I'll need your sidearm, Lasky said. Cole unbuckled her tactical belt, placed the holstered weapon on the table, butt forward. Vest, Reed said, gesturing. She removed the plate carrier with calm precision, set it beside the sidearm. Boots. She stepped out of them, one at a time, placing them neatly beside the table. Her socks barely whispered against the concrete floor. Outer blouse. Cole hesitated, not in fear, but calculation. Every step they took further removed their plausible deniability. That mattered. She pulled the blouse over her head, folding it and laying it flat. Her undershirt clung to her frame, still damp from the late evening run she'd taken before this all started. The thin fabric outlined the hardened muscle beneath. Functional. Lean. Shaped by work rather than vanity. "Arms out," Lasky said. "We need to check for contraband along the seam lines." She raised them slowly, making eye contact. Reed stepped forward, scanned deliberately down her sides. His fingers brushed her ribs once, longer than needed. Cole didn't flinch. "Lift the undershirt," Delroy said from behind her. "For what purpose?" she asked, voice even. "Possible taped items against skin, miniature receivers, concealed flash drives. We've had leaks lately," Lasky answered too quickly. "You're reaching," she replied. "We'll reach further if you don't comply," Reed muttered. The undershirt clung tighter now from sweat and proximity. Cole stood still, breathing slow, steady. 3 walls boxed her in. No witnesses, no cameras, no oversight. She reached for the hem. Lifted. Her lower torso was exposed. Scars crisscrossed her abdomen like a map drawn in pain. One curved low and deep near her obliques. Another wrapped around her side like something once torn open and stapled shut. Lasky's jaw twitched. Reed stopped moving entirely. Delroy stepped forward now, slower. "What the hell is that?" he muttered, staring. But Lasky wasn't done. "Higher," he ordered, voice cracking slightly. "All the way!" She raised the shirt just enough to expose the jagged trauma that slashed under her ribs, a healed gunshot entrance wound that had never been officially documented. Reed blinked hard. "That's Kandahar, isn't it?" Cole said nothing. Delroy shifted, voice quieter. "I saw a redacted after-action from 19. That op wasn't supposed to have survivors." Lasky's eyes stayed locked on her chest. Not the scars, not the recognition, but the body beneath. And then he moved. He stepped in too close, eyes dropping, hand twitching upward, not to search, not to inspect, but to touch. "You're not going to fake your way out of this," he whispered. "Let's see what you're really hiding." His hand rose, open-palmed, gunning for her like a sick animal chasing a moment he thought no one would stop. And that's when Adrienne Cole stopped watching. She struck. Time didn't slow. It sharpened. Lasky's fingers were inches from her chest, palm open, reaching for her like she was property. His eyes no longer saw a fellow service member. They didn't even see a woman. They saw a target, something to conquer. The grin on his face had morphed into a hunger that Adrienne Cole had seen before. Not in training, but in war zones. In men who lost the line between power and permission. Her body reacted before her mind even had to. She caught his wrist mid-reach, the heel of her hand slamming upward into the underside of his forearm with surgical precision. A wet pop cracked through the air as the bones in his wrist bent wrong, not broken but close. He howled. Delroy stepped forward, confused, half lunging. She turned, rotating Lasky's wrist outward while stepping back under his arm, a textbook hyperextension takedown. His body followed the torque, spine twisting violently as he slammed shoulder first into the locker bank. With a hollow metallic thud, Cole didn't wait. Reed charged her, bigger, more dangerous, years of combat experience behind his weight. She let him come. Sidestepping at the last second, she let his momentum carry him forward. Her knee came up hard into his kidney as her elbow smashed down onto his clavicle. He dropped like someone unplugged his spine, groaning, unable to breathe. Delroy stood frozen. "What the? Who are you?" She turned toward him now. Sweat glistened on her exposed torso, the scars glowing under the flickering fluorescent light. Her shirt still hung bunched just under her chest, half off, forgotten. "I'm the one who came back," she said coldly. "From every op the rest of your kind couldn't handle." Delroy backed up instinctively, hands rising, not in surrender, but calculation. "We didn't know. Lasky said it was just an inspection. We weren't going to." "You disabled the cameras." "I didn't. You locked the door." "I was told." "You watched." Delroy tried to bolt. She caught him by the collar before he hit the exit, dragged him backward like a sack of meat, and threw him against the lockers with a hollow bang. He slid to the floor, dazed, his head tilted at an unnatural angle, eyes wide in disbelief. Lasky was moaning, curled up with one arm twisted under him. Reed coughed blood into his sleeve, his jaw hanging open, one leg twitching. Delroy just sat there, stunned, silent. The door clicked open. Langston stood in the frame, pale as a ghost. He hadn't gone through with it. He had waited outside, maybe even regretted it. But he had still come. Cole looked at him, her voice iron. "Still want to see what I'm hiding?" He shook his head, fast. "No, ma'am." "Then unlock the door." He did, hands trembling so badly he nearly dropped the keys twice. She stepped past him barefoot, still half undressed, still steady. Not a victim, not even angry, just done waiting for someone else to do the right thing. Adrienne Cole didn't run. She didn't check for injuries. She didn't reach for her shirt or apologize for the violence. She walked. Barefoot, half-dressed, body gleaming with sweat and memory, scars exposed under the flickering hallway lights. She walked like she had every right to be there. Because she did. Langston followed in silence, eyes low. Behind them, the room of crumpled men groaned softly. None dared pursue her, none even stood. She made it 30 paces before the hallway thundered to life. Boots, voices, the kind of sharp, clipped orders that only came from men used to taking control and realizing it had already been taken. "Freeze! Hands where I can see them!" She stopped calmly, shoulders square. 3 men rounded the corner. The command master chief, the base XO, and a junior security officer still fumbling his sidearm. The XO's voice hit first. "What the hell is going on?" Then he saw her. No rank insignia, no blouse, just a soaked undershirt streaked with fingerprints and creased from the fight. A map of trauma carved across her skin. Wounds no one survives without medals or nightmares. Sometimes both. "Jesus," the XO whispered. The Master Chief raised a hand, signaling the security officer to stand down. He stepped forward cautiously. "Lieutenant Commander, are you hurt?" "No," she replied, "but they will be." "Who?" "Lasky, Reed, Delroy." They staged a forced strip search under forged orders. Langston stood watch. Langston flinched behind her. The XO looked to the Master Chief, then back to Cole. "We weren't informed of any inspection tonight." "Because there wasn't one," she said. "Ma'am, we'll need you to stay right here." She reached slowly into the pocket of her folded jacket, which Langston had carried after her, and pulled out her sealed credentials. The XO opened the document carefully, his face draining of color as he scanned the clearance tags, the cover letter, the command seals. The Master Chief leaned in to read beside him. "Jesus Christ," the XO muttered. "Your task force green?" "No, sir," Cole said. "I was. What I am now is your problem solver." The Master Chief looked from the paper to her face. "You're the SEAL who pulled Lancer 3 out of Kandahar in 19. She said nothing, because she didn't have to. He turned to the XO. "Get legal, get medical. Get the JAG rep on the phone. Now." "What about her?" "Escort her back to officer quarters. Secure her chain of custody. And get female personnel on watch. No one else is to interact with her unless cleared through me." "Yes, Master Chief." Cole turned away without another word, letting them speak in panicked fragments behind her. "We need surveillance logs. Cameras were down. Check locker room 6. She passed through the halls like a rumor solidifying into fact. She didn't slam doors, didn't scream, didn't gloat, because she didn't need to. The system that tried to strip her down was already tearing itself apart. By the time Adrienne Cole reached the officer quarters, the base was no longer quiet. The hallway lights buzzed. Radios squawked with overlapping voices. Footsteps pounded across pavement as security teams scrambled to trace what they'd missed. What they'd failed to see. Cole moved with the same steady pace she always had. No limp, no panic, just presence. Her door hadn't even fully closed behind her before it reopened, this time by protocol. Commander Willis, the base executive officer, stood in the doorway. Behind him was a pair of female master-at-arms personnel and a civilian legal officer hastily roused from base housing. "Ma'am," Willis said, voice low, "may we come in?" She nodded once. They entered cautiously, as though the air itself had shifted, not because of what she'd done, but because of who she clearly was. The legal officer set a manila folder on the desk and opened a recorder. We're initiating a formal incident report as per protocol under Article 120, 93, and 107, attempted sexual assault, abuse of authority, falsifying official documents. Willis rubbed the back of his neck, eyes landing on Cole's sealed envelope, still open on her desk. "Ma'am, may I?" She slid it over without a word. He read in silence, line by line, rank, assignment, authorization level. His jaw clenched slightly by the time he reached the bottom. "I had no idea they sent someone with this kind of background," he muttered. "These orders, they bypass me entirely." Cole responded flatly. "They were sealed for a reason." The legal officer glanced between them. "We're pulling all surveillance logs now. Cameras were disabled in Locker Wing 6, which supports your account. Langston's verbal statement confirms the room was sealed and that you were ordered to undress under false pretense." Willis looked up sharply. "Langston admitted that?" "Came in shaking," the legal officer said. "Didn't even wait for a lawyer. Said this wasn't the first time they'd used that room. Claims they had a system. Target female personnel during shift changes, use fake inspection orders, disable surveillance. Always made sure to have someone watching the perimeter." Cole's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "How many times?" "He's counting. Says at least 6 incidents in the past 8 months. None were reported because..." The legal officer paused, checking his notes. "Because the victims were told they'd fail at inspection protocols and would face disciplinary action if they complained." Willis felt sick. Jesus Christ, 6 incidents? Maybe more. Langston only knows about the ones where he was involved. Says Lasky bragged about having systems in place, fake paperwork, coordinated schedules, even manufactured reasons to isolate female personnel for additional screening. Cole stood and walked to the window, looking out at the dark training grounds. When she spoke, her voice was quieter but somehow more dangerous. "In Kandahar, we had a saying about predators. They're never alone when you find them. They're always part of a pack, and packs always have more victims than the ones you can see." She turned back to Willis. "I want every female service member on this base interviewed by qualified personnel, not base personnel. Bring in investigators from outside your chain of command, and I want it done within 72 hours. "Ma'am, that kind of operation is exactly what I'm authorized to order," she said, producing another document from her folder. This one bore a different seal, Department of Defense Inspector General. Willis read it and sat down heavily. "You're not just evaluating training protocols." "No, Commander. I'm investigating a pattern of systemic sexual assault and institutional cover-up that spans multiple installations across 3 service branches. Coronado is case study number 4. The legal officer looked up from his notes. 4? There have been others? "Norfolk, Pendleton, Quantico. All the same pattern. Predatory personnel protected by institutional inertia, victims transferred or discharged to maintain unit cohesion." She fixed Willis with a stare that could have cut steel. "The Pentagon's patience has run out." "Good," Cole said. "We've taken the 3 instigators into custody," the officer continued. "Delroy's wrist is dislocated. Rita has possible rib fractures. Lasky's left arm is hyperextended with torn ligaments. All conscious. All under medical guard." Willis spoke slowly. "This is going to get messy. If this reaches command above..." "It will," Cole said. "I'll make sure of it." He studied her for a beat. "Is that a threat?" "No, Commander. It's a report. One your base was supposed to catch on its own." Willis looked down, not in shame, in understanding. She didn't give him time to find the right words. "Tomorrow," she said, "I want full personnel files for the last 2 years. Harassment complaints, internal reviews, any unexplained transfers or early discharges filed under family hardship or administrative reassignment." The legal officer hesitated. "That scope may need Pentagon authorization." Cole handed him a secondary credential from her wallet. The seal on the front was black. He blinked. This isn't a liaison assignment." "No," she said. "It's an integrity check, and your command failed it." Willis exhaled slowly. What do you want done tonight? She didn't answer right away. She walked over to her uniform blouse, picked it up from the chair, and slid it over her head. Slowly, carefully, scar by scar, vanishing under cloth. Then she turned back. I wanted those men off my base by Friday. The morning came heavy, not with fog or rain, but with silence, the kind that hung over a base after something had cracked the surface. The chow hall was quieter. The PT yard was less rowdy. Even the instructors barked orders with more restraint, as if someone was listening now, because they were. Lieutenant Commander Adrienne Cole sat in the base command conference room by 0700, a fresh pot of black coffee beside her, and a stack of personnel files, 2 inches thick, in front of her. No one told her to be there. She didn't wait for permission. The files had come from Commander Willis himself. He walked in 5 minutes late, holding an additional envelope. Fresh intel forwarded from Navy Legal. His face looked like he hadn't slept. Ma'am, he said, placing it in front of her. Preliminary review of last 18 months. There's a lot. I expected as much. She opened it, scanning quickly. 17 harassment complaints. 12 were buried under resolved administratively. 4 resulted in the complainant being transferred within 90 days. 1 remained open, with no assigned investigator. 9 of the cases involved women under the rank of E5. 6 of them had requested early discharge. Not one of the accused had been reassigned or formally reprimanded. Reed and Delroy's names came up twice, so did Lasky's. Langston's didn't. He was a follower, Cole said aloud. Willis nodded. He cracked last night, gave a full statement before we even offered immunity. Claimed he thought it was a scare tactic. Didn't expect them to go through with all of it. Cole sipped her coffee. They always say that. Until someone loses an eye, or a career, or a child. Willis flinched. Ma'am, he said carefully. I want to fix this, I do. But this kind of change, it's not just policies. It's culture. That takes time. No, she replied. It takes accountability. He hesitated. And if command above tries to sweep this? She opened her notebook and slid a page across the table. It was blank, except for a list of 6 names. The top one was hers, the other 5 were officers, civilian analysts, and 1 congressman's aide. They won't. He looked down at the list, then back up at her. You're not just here for this base, are you? I'm here because women keep walking away in silence, and no one asks why. He leaned back slowly. So what happens now? Full climate audit, training overhaul. Anyone involved in suppressing complaints is reassigned, pending investigation. Those 3 are already facing court-martial. Langston stays, under observation. He cooperates, or he's next. Willis exhaled. Understood. She rose, collecting the files. And if I hear about so much as a joke made behind a closed door about what happened last night, you won't. She paused at the doorway. You're right about one thing, Commander. Culture doesn't change overnight. Then she turned, her voice colder now. But fear changes in a second. By the next morning, the entire base had heard. Not the rumors, not the whispers from shadowy corners, or exaggerated locker room retellings, but the facts. 3 men had been detained. A SEAL liaison had put them there. And she wasn't just some liaison. She was a woman who bore the kind of scars you didn't earn in training exercises. A woman who'd walked barefoot through a hallway covered in bruises and sweat, while her attackers groaned behind a locked steel door. At 0630, Adrienne Cole stepped into the mess hall in full uniform. Blouse crisp, rank bars in place, every detail regulation perfect. The dining area, normally buzzing with noise and shoulder checks, fell into stillness. Some stood as she passed, not out of command, out of recognition. No one dared speak, not one joke, not one whisper. The same men who might have dismissed her 2 days ago now kept their heads down, or looked her square in the eye with a nod that meant something closer to respect. She took her coffee, black, and her breakfast, simple, and sat at a corner table alone, not because she was excluded, because no one was ready to sit beside her. Yet. A young Marine Lance Corporal passed by with his tray and paused, hesitating. Then he straightened, nodded. "Ma'am," he said. "Morning," she replied. And the base exhaled. What would you have done if you were in her position? Do you think those men learned their lesson? Or just learned to pick their targets more carefully? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. Make sure to like the video, subscribe with notifications on, and share this with someone who still thinks they can intimidate the quiet ones. Our next story's already queued up. Same time tomorrow. Click it now. I'll see you there.